All right, well, it is officially hoodie season, which is my favorite season of the year. If you take a look at this hoodie that I'm wearing right now, it's black stitching on black cloth, so it might be hard to see. But this particular hoodie right here is made by a company called Origin, which is headquartered up in Farmington, Maine. They also make jeans and boots and a number of other products. And I was texting back and forth with Pete Roberts, who is the CEO and founder of Origin, and John Myland, who's another friend that I have that works up there. And we were talking some history. And I found out, through a little bit of research of my own, that there is actually a thread, so to speak, that connects this hoodie with a regiment that fought right here in Gettysburg and got completely sacrificed on the first day of the battle on July 1st, 1863. I have now moved over to the area around the Lutheran Seminary. There you can see the famous cupola up here where John Buford stood and observed the men of A.P. Hill's 3rd Corps as they were advancing on Gettysburg. So it was right around in here where the fighting was going to kick off during the Battle of Gettysburg. And about mid-morning, well, you have all these men from the 1st Corps who are streaming into this part of town, and among them are going to be the men of the 16th Maine. These are hardy men from Maine. As a matter of fact, in their regimental history, they say that when they go on their march through Washington, D.C., a year before, that people notice that the men from Maine seem to be a little bit bigger than the other regiments who have gone through there. And that might be a little bit of bias, in their own writing there. But the 16th Maine, they are going to be at South Mountain and Antietam. Now they're going to be guarding a railroad at that time. Where they first experienced combat is going to be at Fredericksburg. And on the 1st of July of 1863, well, right in here is where they're going to be entering into combat. We are now facing to the west here. As a matter of fact, right here in the distance, that patch of woods that you see is Herbst Woods. That is where the Iron Brigade is going to be engaged on the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg. And the men of the 16th Maine, who are commanded by a guy named Colonel Tilden, well, they are going to be coming up from the south, like the rest of the Army of the Potomac. They are in Paul's brigade of Robinson's division of the 1st Corps. And before they get to town, just because going through town is a little bit of a complicated thing and can bottleneck, well, they're going to hook off in this direction, and they're going to take up a position just on this side of the Lutheran Seminary. Now, I mentioned the connection between the 16th Maine and the company that I talked about, Origin. Well, Company G of the 16th Maine is going to be largely guys who are pulled from that county where Origin is now headquartered. That would be Franklin County. As a matter of fact, they were commanded by a guy who, Company G was commanded by a guy who was from Farmington. But anyway, the men of the 16th Maine, well, they're going to get up here, and they are immediately going to start building redoubts out of earth and out of fence posts and logs and whatever they can find, just in case things go south over in this direction and the Confederates break through. This is going to be a kind of a fallback position. And there's a captain by the name of Whitehouse in the regimental history that it's recorded that he looks at the adjutant and he says, I sure do wish that I felt as brave and cool as the colonel appears. And the adjutant replies, Captain, he said, he's as scared as any of us. Cheer up and it'll soon be over. So Tilden is riding up and down the line here, and he's inspiring his men. And at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, well, these guys get the call to fall in, because even though there's a lot of fighting that's happening over here to the west, well, there's more that is happening over here to the north, as the Confederates under Richard Ewell's 2nd Corps are starting to close in on this position. So the men of the 16th Maine, along with the rest of Paul's brigade, are going to head out. They're going to move north. They're going to go through Sheeds Woods, and they are going to take up a position that is going to be at the tip of the spear for the Army of the Potomac. We have now shifted a little bit to the north, and we are now standing on Oak Ridge. And early in the day on July the 1st, this position right through here would have been occupied by Baxter's brigade. The area out here in this field is known as Iverson's Pit. So this is where the Confederate brigade under Iverson would have come up and got completely decimated by Baxter's brigade as they popped up behind this wall and all shot in unison and just murdered these guys. Well, at about 1 o'clock, Baxter's brigade would have been relieved by Paul's brigade. So Baxter's brigade is going to shift down into the woods, and Paul's brigade is going to take up a spot right here in this area. So right now we are facing to the south. So this is Sheeds Woods, and if we were to continue on, well, eventually we would get to the seminary. And again, at about 1 o'clock, the 16th Maine Infantry in Paul's brigade is going to come up here double quick. Baxter's brigade, they were running low on ammunition, so they're going to shift kind of into the woods. And right here, well, you can see a flank marker for the 16th Maine. Now I know from this angle that might look a little bit like 18, but it is definitely the 16th Maine Infantry. You can see that it says they occupied this line on July the 1st at 1 p.m. Okay, then there's the L there for the left flank. So all through here, actually it may have actually been a little bit more to the right, honestly, like back over here in this area. But this is where the men of the 16th would have come up double quick and taken up a position on the line. And then right out here, okay, you're going to have Confederates in Rhodes' division. You're going to have remnants of Iverson's brigade that are right out here in front of us. And there would have been a lot of lead that was flying here in this area. Colonel Tilden, okay, the commander of the 16th, is going to have a horse that is shot out from under him. And there's a corporal by the name of William Yeaton, who was from Farmington, Maine, kind of, again, drawing that thread back to the hoodie that I'm wearing, that is going to be the first man killed here. There's going to be another guy from Company I by the name of Captain Waldron, who is going to get struck just in the back of the jugular vein, and then it's going to go down and penetrate his lung and kill him. All right, so the 16th Maine is going to charge out here, and they're going to clear out some more of Iverson's men, and then they're going to fall back behind the line. And right here, well, here you can see one of the old tablets for Paul's brigade. Okay, so also in the brigade, besides the 16th Maine, is going to be the 13th Massachusetts, the 94th, the 104th New York, and the 107th Pennsylvania. And then it tells a little bit of their story there. And then if we continue right up here, well, here at this spot is a memorial to the 16th Maine Infantry. And here it says July 1st, 1863, fought here from 1 o'clock until 4 p.m. when the division was forced to retire by the command of General Robinson to Colonel Tilden. The regiment moved to the right near the Mumsburg Road as indicated by a marker there with orders to hold the position at all costs. Now in Farmington, Maine, well, they have a Civil War memorial right there in the middle of town, just a couple of blocks from the origin facility, that is modeled after this memorial right here. I've stepped back just a little bit from the 16th Maine monument, and on the other side of this stone wall. Now, of course, during the early part of the battle on the first day, on this part of the battlefield on Oak Ridge, this stone wall figures prominently. This is where Baxter's men were when they cut down Iverson's brigade. And when Paul's brigade comes up, well, they're going to take up a position behind this stone wall. But it's not exactly this stone wall. The actual stone wall at the time was probably a little bit further back here in this area. Approximately, we don't know the exact location. And there's a humorous story from when the boys from the 16th Maine get up here. In Company G, there's a guy by the name of Lieutenant Thompson. Now, Company G was raised from Franklin County, where the town of Farmington is at, where my friends from Origin live and where they're headquartered. Anyway, this Lieutenant Thompson guy from Company G notices a stranger to the regiment about 15 paces behind their line, and he's loading and he's firing independently. And they're like, what in the heck is this guy doing behind us, firing over our heads? So thinking that this guy might be a little bit sus, this Thompson guy goes over to him, and the men hear him say something in like this low, peculiar tone, and the guy replies, and Thompson just knocks this guy down, and then he picks him up from the ground by the collar, kicks him in the rear, and runs him off. And right here in the middle of this battle, like, all these Maine boys just find that hilarious and are laughing at this scene with this Thompson guy. But yeah, that's another one of the stories from right here on the first day of the battle. Now, we've already looked at the left flank marker for the 16th Maine Infantry right back over here. Right here is their right flank marker. And again, close to about 4 o'clock, as it says there on the memorial, well, the division commander, General Robinson, comes up to Colonel Tilden, the commander of the 16th Maine. By this time, the brigade commander, Paul, he had been hit in the head, survived, but the bullet went behind his eye and had blinded him, so he's out of the fight. Things are closing in on these guys, and General Robinson comes up to Colonel Tilden and says, I need you to move your men out ahead and hold at all costs while the rest of the division falls back. So Colonel Tilden turns around and he looks at his men and he says, you know what that means. And these guys were about to be sent forward right into the jaws of death, and they are going to get completely destroyed. All right, so we are heading to the top of the viewing platform here on Oak Ridge. And again, we've been here before on an episode of American Artifact when we were talking about Iverson's pits. But right here, you can get a really, really commanding view of the battlefield. So where we just were was right over here. So the 16th Maine, as everyone else in blue is headed that way, the 16th Maine, well, they're going to come right up here, and closing in are going to be the Confederates. So you got Iverson's, what's left of them, right out in this area. You got Ramser's brigade right up in here. Up here on Oak Hill is O'Neill's brigade. Okay, these are all in Rhodes' division. And right here, where the Mummasburg Road kind of intersects with this road here today, is where the men of the 16th Maine are going to hold the line. So they are quite literally going to be at the tip of the spear to basically try and hold off the Confederates as long as they can while the rest of the Union men head to the south. Now, Right up here on Oak Hill, well, you see the Peace Light Memorial, and I don't think that I've ever showed that on this channel. So we're gonna link up with my buddy Tim Smith, who is YouTube's resident expert on all things Gettysburg monuments, and learn a little bit more about this position and that memorial. And then we're gonna come right back down here and talk about what happened to the boys of the 16th.
So, you know, one of the places that's kind of interesting to visit is the area of the Peace Light on the first day's battlefield. I feel like here we're at the very northwestern corner of the large rectangle that represents the Gettysburg battlefield. So, you know, I always say that the Gettysburg battlefield is something like 4 miles across and 5 miles long. And so here you're right at the corner of this rectangle. And Gettysburg itself is in the northern center of the rectangle. Prior to the battle, the Southern Army moved northward on the other side of the mountain range and spread their forces across the Pennsylvania countryside. Some of the Southern Army moved towards Harrisburg and threatened the state capital. Some of the Southern Army marched through the town of Gettysburg and east of us, something like 40 miles to the Susquehanna River. So they're scattered over a large area of south central Pennsylvania. And of course, 2 days before the battle, Robert E. Lee, near Chambersburg, learned that the Northern Army was advancing, and they had reached Frederick, Maryland, about 30 miles to our south. So Lee ordered for the concentration of his army. The first day of the battle was fought in the fields west of the town as Southern troops advanced in from the west and met part of the Northern Army that had arrived here the night before. And in the morning action, the Northern Army did pretty well. But by noon, Southern troops began to arrive from the direction of Carlisle. And by 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, some of the Southern Army had begun to arrive from the northeast. And basically, on the first day of the battle, the Northern Army was outnumbered, they were overwhelmed, and they were driven through the town of Gettysburg in heavy fighting. And again, this area here, here in front of us and up on top of the hill behind the Peace Light, you get a really good view of the entire area where the Northern Army retreated. And you know, the South won the first day of the battle. It was one of the greatest Southern victories of the war. But on the first day of the battle, only 1/2 of the Southern Army was involved and only 1/3 of the Northern Army was involved. So the second day was actually much bigger and much bloodier. But standing here, you can look across the town and you can see the light blue water tower on Cemetery Hill where the Northern Army rallied. And south along that cemetery ridge to behind the trees over there where Big and Little Round Top are located, that's where the Northern Army fell back to. And of course, if you come here, you get to see the Eternal Light Peace Memorial, dedicated in 1938 by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and about 2,000 veterans of the Civil War that were still alive at that time. Congress had offered to pay the expenses of any of those veterans who wanted to attend the ceremony, and about 2,000 of them accepted, and from the North and the South. Ironically, more veterans came from California than any other state, a state that was actually not represented by troops during the battle, unless you count that 71st Pennsylvania. But it's just one of the really nice monuments on the field. And you know, the Eternal Flame continues to burn, although during the oil crisis, they actually extinguished the flame for a while and had a giant light bulb on top of the monument, one of my fond childhood memories. But the top of the monument is made out of Alabama sandstone, and the bottom is made of Maine granite, so it represents the North and the South. And this was 1938, the last great reunion of the blue and gray.
I've just moved over behind the Peace Light Memorial, and I'm gonna jump up on this old rock here, because from right here, you really get a sense of what a commanding view the Confederate 2nd Corps had on the first day of the battle. So back in this direction, you're going to have the 11th Corps that is falling back. But look at this high ground. Like, whoever dominates this spot just dominates this part of the battlefield. And then you're going to have our boys from the 16th Maine who are going to be coming out right over here. And again, these poor guys are just going to get hit hard. All right, we're going to dodge back right over here to this spot and take a look at another couple of markers that are dedicated to the 16th Maine. So we have now moved down off of Oak Hill, and right here on Doubleday Avenue, right here where it intersects with the Mummasburg Road, is another flank marker for the 16th Maine Infantry. You can see, as opposed to the other one that we looked at, this one says July 1st, 4 p.m. So this is the left flank marker. And then if we cross the road, well, right over here, they have another marker for the 16th Maine. And this is going to be the tip of the spear. This is going to be the apex of the Union line that these guys are holding. And it's quite appropriate that it's here in this spot, because just imagine a rock in the middle of a river with this rapid flowing river just flowing on either side of it. That's what's going to be happening to the 16th Maine. They're going to be out here at the tip of the spear, and this river of Confederates are going to be flowing around them. And here it says on this marker, position held July 1st, 1863 at 4 o'clock p.m. by the 16th Maine Infantry, 1st Brigade, 2nd Division, 1st Corps. While the rest of the division was retiring, so that's back off in this direction, the regiment, having moved from the position at the left where its monument stands, under orders to hold this position at any cost, it lost on this field, killed 11, wounded 62, captured 159 out of 179 engaged. And then if we go over here, well, we see the right flank marker of the 16th Maine. Now here's the deal. These flank markers and this advanced position marker right here are not in the right spot. So earlier when I was up on the tower, I kind of implied that they made it all the way out to the road, and that's not exactly true. So in the regimental history, they say that the position that they got to was right by where the 88th Pennsylvania Infantry Monument is today. So that is this tall monument right here on the right side of the screen. We've actually done an American Artifact video right there with a sword from Iverson's Pit. So right there, about that patch of woods, is about as far out as the 16th Maine is going to get. But then for whatever reason, well, they put these markers right out here in this position. Maybe because it could be better seen. Yeah, I have no clue. But what is true, and is true no matter what, is that these guys are absolutely sacrificed to save the 1st Corps of the Union Army. So Tilden is eventually going to give the order to fall back to the south. They're going to hold this position for 15-20 minutes, enough to get off a few volleys and give the other men time to get away. And they're going to make it all the way to the railroad cut. And at that spot, this flood of Confederates that are moving to the south and moving in from the west are eventually going to overtake them. The men of the 16th Maine are going to be able to hold the line long enough so that the rest of the division, which is facing this Confederate onslaught from all sides, can escape to the south. And after about 15 to 20 minutes of holding the line, well, Colonel Tilden orders the men of the 16th to fall back themselves. And they are going to make their way through Sheed's Woods, and they're going to get all the way to the railroad cut. Now, this isn't the spot where they made it to. It's actually going to be off to our east. But it was at the railroad cut where the men of the 16th are going to be surrounded. And I read a story that there was a Confederate soldier from an Alabama regiment that shouldered his rifle and shouted out to Tilden to surrender and drop his sword, or else he was going to blow his brains out. And Tilden stabs his sword into the ground. And there are some accounts that say that he broke it off at the hilt, which seems pretty unlikely. And in the official history of the 16th Maine, it doesn't say that he did that. So that's probably apocryphal. But it was in the railroad cut right off in this direction where the men of the 16th Maine were going to just absolutely be crushed. In their final moments before being captured, the one thing that the men of the 16th were thinking of was their regimental colors. To any regiment, the regimental colors were the thing that was very, very important to them, and they didn't want it to fall into Confederate hands. So to keep that from happening, men of the 16th ended up ripping up their own regimental colors and distributing the pieces among themselves, where they hid it in their clothes, some like shoved it in their mouth to hide it. And most of these guys are going to be captured. So if you look at the 20th Maine, which gets a lot of attention at Gettysburg, rightfully so, they suffered about 35% casualties. The men of the 16th Maine are going to have over 80% casualties. Most of them are going to be hauled off to a prisoner of war camp. But anyway, that was a little bit on the sacrifice of the 16th Maine right here at Gettysburg.